come to us from fantastic homes, and Commander's got his retirement going on here along with his friend Sushi. And well, we're just so privileged to have them with us. But for every Commander and every Sushi, we have to say no to so many horses that are looking for new homes. So the 11 we have vary from Shetland ponies through to our biggest one is about 16 hand Dollar, who you may have seen on the Facebook post inviting you to this, winking at you, and yeah, that's Dollar. And so many of the, I mean, I could spend an hour just talking about the 11 horses here, but yeah, they've all got their stories. So with us today, it's Commander and Sushi. The other horses are all further up the pastures, up the hill. I'm sort of tied to the building area because of Wi-Fi, but Commander and Sushi have come to join us on the front lawn, which we've renamed the Party Paddock because they're very excited about coming here for a couple of hours. I think they're quite glad we didn't go ahead on Friday, Linda, to be honest, because they've got take two at the Party Paddock, so they're all good.
There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Debbie, I wonder if we pull the mic away a little bit. Some people are having a little trouble hearing. I wonder if that's, oh, maybe that's a little better.
Hang on, let me undo the makeshift mic holder. Bear with me.
Clothespin, baby. Oh, let me know. Is that better, folks?
How about that?
I know I had trouble, but it ended up being my headset. So
Yeah.
just let me know if that's any better. Just want to make sure everybody can see and hear. And it looks like we are. Yeah, we are live now.
Going on here along with
and it looks like we are. Shoot. All right. Okay, now I got to watch two things. Okay. Oop. Okay. Looks like I just killed my audio. Oops. All right. You can hear better? Okay. All right. So, Debbie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, we got an audio problem here. Hold on. Can you hear me, Debbie? I lost my audio now. Ah. Oh, how's that?
I can still hear you.
Oh, I can't hear you now. Oh my goodness. Here, but muffled. I'll let you know once we start again. Okay. Just give me a second here. I lost my audio now. Well, isn't that great? Okay. All right. All right. How's that? Debbie, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can everyone hear me okay now?
Oh my goodness. All is fine. Thanks, Melissa. And you guys can hear me. Can everybody hear Debbie? For some reason, I can't hear Debbie now. Okay, let's keep going. That's all right. Debbie, I wanted to ask you if there's other aspects that you on your farm that you incorporate into your work, other things that you do other than just work with horses.
Yeah.
I know when we were there, when I was there, we were looking at some of your nature things that you do.
That's right. So
perhaps
when
you
we
can speak to that.
When we started off, it was very much about the horses, and we did riding. It was very horse based, and then it just kind of became clearer to us how much coming out into the countryside and coming out into nature was a big part of that. And I think that's one of the strengths of horses in any kind of animal therapy, is that most times you've got to visit their world rather than them coming to your world. So we started doing nature trails, little stuff like that. And then over the last few years, we've really branched out a lot. One of the things that we do now is mindfulness with the horses, which started off amazing with a grant from our local authority to enable us to develop mindfulness with the horses, which for us, it really fitted with what we were doing with the horses, because they were an aging population. The riding horses that we'd had were now retiring, and we had a choice. Do we just get more and more horses? Well, apparently you have to stop somewhere. Or do we get rid of the old horses and get younger ones? No, that definitely wasn't on the cards for us. And particularly when you're working therapeutically, it's all about people building up a relationship and a connection with the horses. So we couldn't just, cast away the older ones. It just wouldn't feel right. So we changed the activities instead of changing the horses. And it all sort of came together at the right time. A friend of my brother just trained as a mindfulness teacher. She had a long background in mental health, so it worked perfectly for the clients we were working with. And it's been amazing just sort of exploring the different ways that's taken us. One thing with mindfulness is it does get people to sort of be creative as well. When you practice mindfulness, it kind of unleashes that creative side. So we went with that as well. And now if you come for a session, it might involve doing some art. We do singing, we do drumming, we all do all kinds of things, as well as walking around the outside of our farm, sort of the outside track, and just being with the herd rather than actually having to do stuff all the time. So yeah, we've definitely kind of moved away from being totally focused on the horses to a bigger kind of holistic picture really of what's going on and what people need.
Perfect.
I think it's interesting, Linda. One of the I might talk about us. It's myself and Dave, my partner, when we started this up. We're from a long horse background, both of us. Dave from a family that had horses, me just coming into the world as a sort of horse obsessed little girl. And when we talked about our favourite times with horses, it very often wasn't the kind of, when we won a rosette or did a clear round or best dressage test or whatever the benchmark might be. It was just leaning on the gate in the evening, watching them eat their hay, or just standing near them, listening to them munching at the grass. And we thought, why set up a centre where actually you're not giving people the time to be able to do that? Because it's just as special to everyone else as it is to us. It's those moments of connection where you're just connecting as equal beings rather than what can I get this animal to do for me. So we just gradually kind of incorporated that into the bigger picture of what we were doing.
Beautiful. Absolutely. So you live your horses as close to nature as possible. Equine leadership is about living horses as close to nature as possible so we can see that and learn from that model of living that they show us. How do you create that environment for your horses so they are as close to nature as possible, except the trains? And then maybe what are some challenges that you meet in being able to do that in this day and age?
Well, we moved to a place where we'd have a big enough pasture to have the horses out, ideally 24/7, all through the year. That's the ideal. I'll come back to the challenges in a moment. But for me, I think having them as close to nature as possible involves freedom to move and being with your mates, being with your friends. So we're so lucky because we live on site and we can kind of track that natural pattern with the horses. And I've been in the position where I've had horses at livery and been working to support my horse. So you have that kind of mad thing where you do 8 hours a day in the office or the factory, and then you drive down there trying to catch the daylight, and the evenings are getting darker. And it's all quite frenetic, and that's not on horse time at all. When you live alongside your herd, it's wonderful to be able just to kind of get into that groove of just, slowly. And I love for horses to be able to follow their own pattern, follow their own rhythm of life. I think that's really important. So that's the ideal, out in the herd all the time. The challenges are, ironically, probably the two things that you think obviously in natural is grass and mud. So we've either got too much grass or too much mud. It's really interesting, there's lots of developments, things like track systems and such like, and we're always kind of evolving what we do. We haven't got a track system as such, but we've got lots of different kind of areas that the horses can go into. And as I said before, add into the sort of natural habitat. So when we moved down here, there were no trees here apart from a hedgerow around the edge. So, you know, adding that kind of thing. But even inheriting this beautiful hedgerow, actually, the hedgerow here is full of blackthorn, and pretty dangerous for the horses to be. And I speak from experience because I lost a horse many years ago, but who was in a beautiful post and rail paddock with a natural hedgerow around, and she punctured an eye. The only thing she could have done it on was on the thorn hedge. So we're kind of replacing the blackthorn hedges with hedges that are more horse friendly to go rummaging around them. So the grass is a challenge because it was dairy pasture, so you've got very rich grass. So the answer to that is to devise things like track systems where the horses can move around on a smaller area, so they're not just stable or they're not just enclosed. And we have, you know, various gates all over the place that the horses can sort of move between the different enclosures. The mud is a problem because we're on really heavy clay soil here. So once you start limiting horses onto track systems, you then get areas that, of course, have more wear. And if you're struggling with heavy clay soil, it can be really expensive. So there's some that comes down to finances. It can be overcome, but to put the different surfaces in can be a lot of money, which realistically most people can't find straight away. Oh, another challenge we have is Dollar, the famous winking horse, because a really easy way of putting up a sort of temporary track system is to put in an inside fence of electric fencing, right? But he knows that the stakes aren't electrified, and so he just pulls them out, lays the electric fence on the floor, and lets all his friends into the area where there's more grass anyway. So Dollar can't always join in the fun. So it's finding something that caters for all your horses. So when we're talking about being out 24/7 with your mates, if we look at the winter before the one that's just happened, they were out all through the year, 365 degrees, lovely cold weather, hay out in the field, wonderful. When you visited us, Linda, and you know, the winter just gone, you know, I was tearing my hair out because the horses had had to come in. It was so muddy everywhere, to the point where, you know, they were just getting it stuck. I don't know what it is with our mud, but it sticks. So when we bring them in, we try and still give them time outside, but also make sure they're next to their friends. The stables, if they have to be stable, have low partitions so they can still scratch each other, touch each other, making sure that friends are stable next to friends. Sometimes that involves a few, you know, moves around from season to season. Friendships could have changed. But yeah, you know, those are the challenges, and I think we have to be realistic that, you know, not only our own experience, but I think people in general, the whole idea of horse, even ownership has kind of passed by, hasn't it? We now no longer like to think of owning horses. You know, they're with us. So the whole idea of how you look after horses has changed, and we have to move along with that and just do the best we can. I meant to say about the herd as well, is that it's lovely to think, oh, we've put all the horses out as a herd, therefore it's as natural as possible. But actually, in a man-made domestic situation, you know, we choose who's in the herd. It's not a natural family arrangement. So some horses can actually get quite stressed if they're in incompatible herds. So we've actually got our 11 split into 3 at the moment, and that's simply because we've got some little ponies that just can't tolerate the amount of grass that the bigger ones can. So that's a management reason. And then we've got another subdivision just because not all of the horses will get on as well as we want them to. We've actually got some of the older ones in a paddock by themselves, so that they've all got company and they can all meet each other over the fences, but just so that they don't get kind of lost in the rough and tumble of a Dollar and Bilbo play type.
For sure. Yeah. And they might not, you know, you look at that in the wild, and that they might not be in the same herd in the wild. So
exactly,
you know,
and they can't, there's no out for them, is there, in a domestic herd? We choose where the yeah, however much we put track systems in, however much we, you know, put them out naturally, we still control the fences and the gate.
Exactly.
So it's never true freedom.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. But it's as close to nature as possible that we can
Yeah,
get.
we've all just
Absolutely.
got to do
Yeah,
the best we can, haven't we, and keep
yep,
learning
that's what we have.
and yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move to the, to the horses, and we talk about the voice of the horse or the wisdom that they offer us. Let's talk about your work. How do you share that voice or the wisdom of the horse with humans? What kind of work? I'm using work in a quote
Yeah,
fingers here, but what
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
work do you do? How do you,
Okay.
yeah.
So we call it therapeutic horsemanship. We're not therapists, so we're not doing any kind of counselling. We're not doing any kind of therapy. It just arose from the idea that, you know, being around horses has got lots of benefits for people. So I was lucky enough to have horses in my life from an early age, mainly because I stalked everyone in the neighbourhood that had horses. But, you know, I got the horses in there somehow. And they saw me through my teenage years. They've been there for me. So horses can help on so many levels. So start with that basic premise and kind of the realization that, yeah, it's great for personal development as well, because to be a good horse person, you need lots of qualities like empathy, like trust. You need to be able to trust, and you need to be able to inspire trust. Patience, focus. There's so many qualities that being around horses can help us with. That, you know, we just kind of came into this with by chance, to be honest. We weren't trained. There was a organisation in our county that asked us to work for them, and we weren't given any training, so we just kind of made it up as we went along. And all we could do was bring our knowledge of working with horses to the situation, if you like. Now, I'm not saying that that's the best way to do things, and there's some great training out there nowadays, but what it did do was it allowed us to evolve our own way of doing things. So if you're with half a ton of horse who doesn't want to do what you want to do, then you find ways to compromise, you find ways to work around that. And we kind of brought that to working with the clients that we were working with at the time. And it's just evolved over the years. I mean, I've been doing this work one way or another for just over about 20 years now. And you never stop learning. You know, every new person that comes to you and every new horse that comes to you teaches something different. But the basic premise is just hanging out with the herd, being kind to each other, and just seeing where it takes us. And for each person, that will be different.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you work off a set of values or principles there? Yeah.
We've got kind of one underlying thing that we never lose sight of. So if we say that therapeutic horsemanship is the bringing together of people and horses in a way that improves the person's mental, emotional, and physical well-being, it should never be to the detriment of the horse's mental, physical, or emotional well-being.
Nice.
So we never lose sight of that. That's our kind of checkpoint back to. Now, ideally, it's going to be to the benefit of the horses as well. But
Absolutely.
I think, you know, when I look back to what we were doing in the early days, and there was a lot more riding involved and a lot more kind of traditional, I say traditional, not traditional for England, because we're kind of, you know, Western style riders. So that was different anyway. But there were certain things that we were asked to do, and we thought, no, this doesn't feel right. So we'd tweak things. And when you kind of get away from that traditional mainstream setting into the therapeutic world, there's a lot to be questioned, I think. I run some training courses here just to share with people what we've learned over the years. And the one example that I always give to people to kind of get them thinking about this is, if you went to your local riding school, and I'm not, you know, being negative about all riding schools, but this is a fairly typical example. Most people will carry a riding crop, whip, wand, whatever you want to call it, carrot stick, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, they'll be asked to carry one. And they'll, you know, imagine a child going for a lesson and they're told to carry their crop. And the language is, oh, we love our horses, if we do anything for our horses. If he's naughty, just give him a tap. When you translate that into the therapeutic world, where we're actually working with a lot bigger proportion of people that come from a background of abuse, then what you've just said is, within a loving relationship, it's okay to hit. So we have to immediately question all the things we might have taken for granted, you know, in the traditional setting. So yeah, it's a never-ending journey.
Absolutely. And you know, Debbie, we when I came over, this brings to mind something that was a brushing horses. There was a grooming. Grooming,
yeah.
the word grooming,
So,
the use of the word grooming.
Yeah, it's taken on a different connotation now. So, you know, a lot of kids quite rightly are being made aware of people grooming them on the internet. So even when we introduce grooming a horse, you know, that's what we've always done, right? People are called grooms. I'm not saying we should lose that word entirely, but when people are coming to you from a non-horse background and you say, right, we're going to do some grooming today, it immediately means something different. So we start off with the word brushing and then introduce grooming as, you know, we call this grooming, so we're going to groom a horse. But thinking about how you introduce things to start with can be important to people.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I remember coming over and that came up in our conversation, and it was a light bulb moment for me in just the words that we tend to use. And when people come to see the horses, and it's our wording. It's just, we have to be so aware of what we're saying.
Well, that reminds me, Linda, absolutely of the very early days of doing this, when we were renting a yard and we had 2 ponies there that belonged to the landlord, but he said, you know, we were welcome to do whatever we wanted with them. So they were just kind of part of our herd. And we used to sort of, if new people came, we'd take them and introduce them to the horses. And one of the little ponies, beautiful little coloured pony, and she had breathing problems. The previous people that had rented the yard ran a riding school, and they'd suggested that she be put down because she couldn't be used for riding anymore. So she'd come to the end of her economically useful life. But our landlord didn't really want to have her put down. And we agreed, no, she's fine. You know, we'll just groom her, lead her, whatever she's comfortable with. Now we've got some horses with us who have done competitions and this, that, and the other. And it's quite easy when you're showing people around a herd to get kind of stuck on those labels. Oh, here's Tash, she used to be Appaloosa champion. Oh, this is Amy, he see all the rosettes he's won. Oh, this is her. And you get to Puff, and the main thing that we knew about Puff was that she couldn't be ridden because she'd got breathing problems. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I thought, well, this isn't fair. We don't value these horses on what they've achieved. Yes, they're interesting stories, and yes, we're very proud of the ones that have done this, that, and the other, but we love Puff equally as much. And it suddenly dawned on me, if I was showing a child or an adult who didn't tick all of society's boxes, then I had to get that across, that we value Puff as much as the others, because it'd be very easy to go on about the others' achievements and, oh, here's Puff, she doesn't do much because her breathing isn't great. Yeah. But so I consciously changed how I was introducing her. You know, this is Puff. We love Puff. She's amazingly gentle. People love leading her around. She's very slow and walks at your pace. And, you know, I just kind of turned it on its head. She was known as the pony that couldn't do stuff. And with us, she became the pony that could, and was loved as much as the others. So again, it's, you know, that stopped me in my track, because I found myself doing that old kind of horse thing of introducing the labels rather than the spirit inside.
Absolutely. That sounds like a beautiful children's story. The pony that could.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's my lockdown challenge.
There you go. So let's add that. You mentioned lockdown there. How do you, somebody's having a nap. or rolling.
Oh, a little roll, yeah.
um, how are you managing in these times as far as connecting with your clientele?
Well, it all happened very quickly, didn't it? And quite a challenge. So we needed to shut down. We needed to protect ourselves and the herd. Some of our staff fall into the vulnerable category. But it was a tough decision in a way, because I know that a lot of people that come to us see us as their sanctuary. So just when they needed that sanctuary the most, it was taken away from them. So that was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to stay in touch digitally as much as we could, which has involved Zoom sessions. I mean, who knew about Zoom? It's now become the new verb, hasn't it? Yeah, everyone's Zoom. But we do Thursday morning sessions for the group that used to come here on Thursday morning, which was a mindfulness group. So we have sessions where we gather together and do a meditation and do some other activities. And we're actually just putting together some individual meditations for each of the horses. So we've got a Facebook page, which I think it's also helping people UK. And we've got mindfulness at Horses Helping People. So as and when we do these meditations, they'll be up there on the mindfulness page for people to listen to and take part in. Even if you don't know the horses, I think what we're trying to do is paint a word picture of the horses. So it will be accompanied by some pictures of the horses. So if you fancy doing that, head on over there. And our mindfulness teacher, Chris, has put some tips on there. So the pinned post on that page is some handy tips. If you've not done meditation before, it just guides you through.
Nice.
And remember, folks, you can't do it wrong. That's the biggest thing about it. You can't do it wrong. So don't be worried. Don't be put off.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So doing that, but also some WhatsApp video calls with the horses, which have been great fun. Dollar obviously loves it. I love seeing the different reactions from the different horses. Louis is like, no, I don't think I'm going to talk to that phone. What are you on about? Dollar is straight in there, blowing down the screen. So we've had some fun times doing those, and trying to keep the Facebook posts going. And really, for us who are used to being out in the field all the time, people that know me know that I'm not that techy. So trying to get that knowledge in. I've got some great staff helping. So shout out to Chris and Becky as well, who are helping out with this and keeping that side of it going.
Excellent. Okay, so how do you create space? We always talk about how do we create space for each other? How do we hold space for each other? How do you create space? Now, I say for horse and human to connect. And when we spoke, when I was over there in January, I asked Debbie about how do you create space for the horse, and then how do you create space, but most importantly, the human. And Debbie sort of redirected me very quickly, so that it's about the horse first. So how do you create that space for the horse and human, though, to connect?
Because it is about the horse first, to make it okay for the human. So from our point of view, the horses are always priority. I love my clients, but they know the horses come first. And that's exactly how it should be down here, because we're very horse-centered. It's non-clinical. So people come here because the horses are at the centre. Now, I'm a great believer that in making sessions safe, and safety is a big thing here. We are working with vulnerable people. We're working with unpredictable animals. What could possibly go wrong? But the way that you save it from going wrong is for your horses to feel safe. So there's two kind of aspects to this. The physical safety is that, let's imagine, for example, I've got a horse in the arena loose or in a paddock loose, and there's a client with me. If the client does anything, or there is any situation where the horse's anxiety level goes up, it may be something externally that's happening. I want that horse to come to me as its protector. So that comes from my day-to-day interactions with the horses. I've said before how lucky I am to live down here with the horses. It means that I'm in and out of their fields during the day. They see me around. Every time I'm around, and Dave and our son Morgan, they're learning about us. So they're learning whether we're safe people to be around. So I have to kind of be aware of my behaviour around the horses all the time. Not just my behaviour, but my energy that's driving the behaviour. They've got to see me as a safe place. So that if push comes to shove, they're not looking to run away. They're looking to run away to me. And that helps to keep the clients physically safe, because the horses will look to me for their protection, or Dave or Morgan, whoever's working with them. So that's physical safety. And the mental safety, it's important as well, because, you know, if it goes back a little bit to what I was saying about introducing Puff the pony. It's telling the client everything they need to know about how I'm going to treat them as a vulnerable person. So if I dismiss my pony because she doesn't do everything I want, she's, you know, not physically the best specimen, that's how I'm going to treat them. I think it was Gandhi, there's this wonderful Gandhi quote that he said, you can tell a lot about a society by the way they treat their animals. And I think that's very true. Mm-hmm. So again, we have to be really mindful of how we are with the horses, and that shouldn't be something that's a put on act for the client. That is just the way we live our lives, that the horses need to feel safe with us.
Absolutely.
And so those two things together, if the clients are seeing that the horses are treated, they're vulnerable, the horses are vulnerable, the clients are vulnerable. If we treat the horses well, we're going to treat the clients well. If we take the time to listen to the subtleties of what the horses are trying to tell us, then that makes the clients feel good. I remember one time, it just reminded me of a time we run return to work courses sometimes for people that have been unemployed for a while, and we run them for the people that are furthest from the workplace, so they're maybe homeless, addictions. And this is going back some years, I'd got a horse who really enjoyed kind of that liberty stuff. She'd have been a circus horse in another line. She loved kind of bit of loose schooling, round pen work, whatever you want. I'm not talking about join up, I'm just talking about being directed at liberty. And I was doing this with a group of people on the return to work course as a demonstration, just to show how a horse could listen to the subtleties of your body language and energy. But I just got the vibe she wasn't enjoying it that day. There was nothing major, but from some of her reactions, I just had this feeling she'd got a headache. I can't tell you why I felt that. It was just something in the way she was holding herself, something in the way she was reacting. So I had one of those kind of head versus heart moments where the heart is saying, stop what you're doing, stop what you're doing. And the head is going, but I've got this course to run and these people have come here to see this answer. And in the end, heart won out. And I went, listen, guys, I've just got to stop this. It doesn't feel right. Really sorry, but I think she's got a headache. So if you don't mind, I might just swap to another horse, or maybe we'll do another activity. Well, everyone was immediately fascinated. How do you know she's got a headache? Well, I don't know. It's just a gut feeling, and I'm going to go on my gut feeling because that's what feels the best thing to do. She normally would do this stuff fine. She's just not responding in the way. And it turned into this really interesting conversation about how, if you're in the workplace, then how would you like your boss to treat you? And so it was perfect. I mean, it's one of those unplanned things. I always find it unplanned things are the most perfect things to happen. But it was kind of, for me, it was really that head versus heart thing.
Yeah.
So glad that I listened to my heart in that second.
For sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, and that following our heart or following our intuition always leads to something that's right. Whether it's a good discussion, definitely. You know, it's right for the horse. It always leads to something that's right.
And I think that's the challenge for some of us that, you know, doing this work or whatever you want to call it, is to when part of you has got to be aware of all the kind of head things like health and safety and paying clients and this, that, and the other. It's remembering that actually the most powerful thing there is the truth that your heart is telling you.
For sure. And that's, I don't think that's just in necessarily the work, this work, it's in
No,
any
it's
human
general.
connection work.
I think you're right. And
Yeah,
I think that's one way that the horses bring it to the fore, because standing there as they do as vulnerable animals, totally in our power. And I mean that in terms of the fact that we control the senses. These horses realistically didn't come up to me and say, please, can I be your therapeutic horse?
No,
They're here because I brought them here.
exactly.
They might do a brilliant job at it, and they
Yeah,
bring, you know, much more to it than I ever expected. But, you know, that's the bottom line. And so because that's the case, we've got to honor that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And when they don't want to do the work, they don't.
Yeah.
So can you share us a story? You've talked a bit about your yourself and how you started. Can you share maybe a story with everybody about maybe some a moment, an aha moment with one of your clients, or a transformational moment that they had when they were at your place working with horses?
Yeah. There's loads.
Just
Let's
one.
narrow it down to us. And actually, before I share the aha moment, I am going to say that people love the aha moments. They love the light bulb moment. But I want to say that actually the long, slow stuff is the core of what we do. And I think people do this work in different ways, obviously. And for me, what I love is the ongoing relationship, growing connection with the horse. And, you know, I've had some people come on our training courses thinking that there's going to be all these aha moments. You can put pressure on yourself as a facilitator to try and get the aha moment, and that can then lead to a lot of projection. You can lead to stuff that's not really going on because you want to create something for the customer. And I mean, the magic is all around us, the mystical spiritual side of it. It's here. We don't need the light. Excuse me. It doesn't need to come kind of announcing itself in sparkles. It's just there. But anyway, let's have an aha moment.
Debbie, you always do this. I have these questions and then you turn them on there. You spin them around. I'm like, oh my God, she's right. You're absolutely right. So anyhow, I'll let you continue. But
we do have some good aha moments. So let me share you one. So there was a lady that came to us. I get quite a few phone calls from women, particularly that are in maybe their 50s, 60s, and they always start off saying, you're going to think I'm mad, but I've never been around horses. But they come to me in dreams now, and I feel the need to be near them. Or I saw one on holiday, I feel the need to be near them. And I always have to say, no, you're not mad, because I've heard this lots of times before. And I don't know what's going on out there, but it's a thing. Anyway, so one of these women came to us. She had a moment on holiday where she'd seen these horses on a cliff top and been so moved, never having been around horses in her life. And bizarrely, it was a place where I'd been on holiday the year before and had found the same horses on the same cliff top, so I knew exactly where she was coming from. And she was a lady with a lot of history of mental health issues, been in and out of hospital, self-harm, you name, you know, all the different therapies she'd had. And she kind of had her fill of that. And she just felt the need to be near horses. So fine, she came along to us. As I say, we're not therapists. So we work with people with mental health issues with a lot of safeguarding around that. So we will know what triggers are. We will have key worker details to refer to if we think there's any problems within sessions. But quite honestly, the way we work, it doesn't tend to bring up those difficult moments for us to deal with. Anyway, she's been to us about 5 or 6 sessions. I think it was about her 6th session. And we'd started her off with one of the very kind of placid, easy to get to know horses. And she'd, bear in mind, this lady had no previous horse experience. So she'd learned about, you know, we'd done a bit of herd watching, we'd done a bit of brushing. And when people have been coming to us for a little while, we start to ask them, what do you want to do? What do you want to do today? We've kind of shown them the pick and mix that you can have. What you want to do. And she said, I'd really like to work with Dollar today. Now, Dollar at the time, I mean, he's a big personality now, but at the time he was only about 4. And his personality, if possible, was even bigger. And so we went out and I was leaning on the paddock gate with her, just explaining how Dollar's energy would feel different. And I was kind of working out in my head what activities we would do with him that would be safe for her level of horse experience and would be appropriate for him. And suddenly, out of nowhere, came Louis. Now, Louis is one of our most timid, wary horses because he's super sensitive. He's just like the wizard of the horse world. He's working on another plane. Then he came over to the gate and he put his head in her chest and she started crying. And I thought, oh, okay, this has nothing to do with me. And I literally took a step back because I kind of did the mental check in my mind. Yes, she's okay. These are released tears. This is good. You know, she's not getting more distress. And I don't actually know what's going on here. So I'm just going to let it happen. And it went on for about 20, 25 minutes. And he just stood there. Bear in mind, this is not a horse that comes up to people usually at all, even to be stroked. Commander's having a very noisy drink behind me. If you can hear anything, he likes to put his nose underwater and just splash around. So if you can hear some strange noises, that's him. But back to the story, back to Louis. As I stood there, I actually thought, you know, this woman has got a better connection with this horse than most kind of horse experts that I know in the years and years of horse experience. So I can't tell you what happened exactly after 25 minutes. They just parted, and it was hard to say whether she stopped crying and he left, or whether he left, she stopped crying. And I gave her a minute to sort of compose herself. And then the first thing I actually said to her was, you know, that was nothing to do with me, because bear in mind, this woman had got no previous horse knowledge. So she probably thought I'd had a word with Louis earlier and said, you know, come on over. This would be great if you could do that. Yeah. But I told her how special it was that, you know, he really had chosen her to do that. And then I said, look, you don't have to share anything if you don't want to, but I'm genuinely curious if you want to share. How did that feel? Because genuinely it was nothing to do with me. And she said it was like he knew all my pain. It was better than any therapy I've ever had. And you know, it was so special. It stayed in my mind forever because it was. I've seen it since. Louis does that from time to time when he feels that people need it. You can't plan it. You can't ask him to do it. He will just do it if he wants to. I've seen similar things with other horses, but never to quite the level that Louis does it. And it stayed with her. So I know for a fact that, you know, that is something she's carried around with her. So more than all the therapy that she's had, just the connection with a horse and what he exchanged with her was far more powerful and far more lasting than anything else that would come up for her. So that's a really special one. And I think one question that it kind of is interesting, and I think everybody that's doing this work with horses should be asking themselves if they haven't, is do the horses know they're helping? Do the horses know they're helping? And if so, what makes you think that? Let's have some examples. And why do you think they're doing it? Now, we'll never know the answer to that for sure. We'll never know the answer, particularly to the why do you think. But it is a fascinating conversation to have.
Very philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, someone asked me that in the middle of a training course one day. She was on the training course and she said, oh, so do you think they know they're helping? And I immediately went, yeah. And then I thought, why did I say that? Do I actually, you know, if I think about this scientifically, my heart knows it, but it's my heart just kind of reading what I think, what it wants to see. So I thought of some examples, and, you know, for a while I was obsessed with that question and asking everyone that I knew, and, you know, people that came down here, what do you think? What do you think? So, you know, we've come up with our own kind of ideas about that, but I think it's a great conversation to be had, maybe something for, you know, the Facebook pages, something like that.
For sure. No, I think that's a really good one. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's so true. That's so true. We can do all the work, but it's those moments of connection that are the strongest, that anybody, even ourselves, get the most out of, is just those moments of connection.
Well, that's why we're called Horses Helping People, because it is the horses that are helping people.
Exactly.
We're there to keep it safe. We're there to set it up. but actually people don't come to see us, they come to see
Them, of course, yeah. That one.
yeah.
Okay, so as we've almost been an hour here, so
Have we? Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
we have. Let's talk about the bigger picture. I've tried to stay away from that bigger picture for now in our conversation, but let's look at the bigger picture. And I think you brought it on really well, is how do the horses, do they know they're helping? But we know from their model of living that they are helping, whether they know it or not. They have this model of living that is just something we can learn so much from. And the closer they get to nature, the better. How do you see it leading to change, like humanity's change? And especially after, in this time, like what we're going through right now, we're going through something that's so monumental and so out of anybody that has known. How can they lead to that change? What is that change?
I think it's what they were doing before this crazy, thing that's happening to people. It's drawing us back to nature.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the biggest things of what we do, and it hasn't changed. I mean, again, I say how lucky I am to be in lockdown here. Just thank my lucky stars, because every day the horses are just doing their horse things. I say just, I mean, they're doing the most important things in the world. They're getting on with stuff. People have gone crazy because we're having to change all the things we do, the economy, but what's the economy to the horses? They're still eating their grass. They've still got their mates here. It's not affecting them. And what I find the horses do, just regularly before the crazy man situation happened, is they bring people back to nature. It is amazing how disconnected people are getting nowadays. And I think, what they're modeling for us is that there is a bigger picture going on here. We think the world is turned upside down. Kind of hasn't. It's kind of just our peoply bit of it. It's turned upside down. We can't go to work for a bit. We can't, It's a huge thing. Don't get me wrong. And, my heart goes out to the people that are on the front line and suffering with it. But there is still a world turning. Spring is still springing. The horses are still eating the grass. They haven't gone running around like crazy beings. So it's kind of that nature's here and nature's waiting for us to come back to her. And I think the other thing that the horses are really great at, you mentioned the model that they provide us, and the closer back to nature we can get, the better that is. That in itself is a learning thing. So when you look at horses in their natural environment, and then you look at them when that natural environment is compromised, you can see how much it affects them.
Yeah.
So we might think, like I said earlier, we might think horses out of grass in a herd, brilliant, back to nature. No, because it's a man-made herd, because we control the fence, because it's, the wrong kind of grass, they haven't got as much variety, they don't move as much as they should. But at least it's, it's part way there. If we take the other extreme and we look at horses in a stable, and sometimes in the winter when we have to stable them, we know it's going to impact on them. So you might get horses that are then, weeding and getting digestion problems because they're getting concentrated food and they can't move as much as they could. And so for people, I think we forget that when we lose that connection with nature, or when we live in an environment that's not healthy for us, it does affect us. And I see that particularly in people, we work a lot with people with mental health issues, and I love working with people that are highly sensitive. And very often, they're a bit overwhelmed by the world. So sometimes end up with us with sort of anxiety, depression. We're dealing with that. And a typical case here is a person that maybe can't cope with the craziness of life, life before all this double craziness, just the kind of fast, high-tech pace of life. So maybe they can't hold down a job. So maybe they get rehoused by social services, and it's in a flat, and it's in town, and maybe they have to share with another person, and it's all too much. But they don't realize it's their environment that's bad. They think, oh, this is me, I'm being weak, I can't cope. But actually, if you look at a horse, and you look at a horse, out there eating, happy in its environment, and then you put him in a stable and away from his friends and behind him, you think, well, yeah, of course that's going to affect him. So if it can help people to realize that, we need to look at, I always say to people, I can sit here in the middle of a field, in a caravan away from people with my horses, and I can be a company director and all these kind of important things in the people world. And that means nothing. Put me in a flat in the middle of town, and I couldn't cope. Yeah. So I've been lucky enough through the journey that, that my life has been, my meandering kind of thing, to get to a point where, I'm surrounded by stuff that keeps me relatively okay.
For sure, yeah.
But for people out there to realize we need to get back to this. More people need to be able to do what I'm able to do and find their happy place and find their place where they can thrive and not just exist.
Find that environment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. So then if, and I think sort of touched on here, but if you had, as with your connection with the horses, if you had one call to humanity right now, if one call to us humans, what would it be? And that's coming from the horses, from you, however that comes to you. What would be that one call to humanity right now?
Yeah, be still. Come back to nature. Don't get sucked into the trivia. Enjoy the stillness. And maybe that's, important at this time as well. With, in a way, in amongst the scary stuff, we're being given a gift of just being for a while. So if we can avoid getting sucked into the trivia and the social media, going down the rabbit holes of stuff you really don't want to read about, just come back to the horses and come back, as I say, go on our Facebook page if you want and find the meditations there to help you.
Yeah.
And whatever way you can, just regroup, get off the treadmill for a while and think about the stuff that's important. There's big stuff going on at the moment. I'm not trivializing it. And when big stuff is going on, it can actually help us sometimes to reevaluate what is important. So, this is me rather than the horses saying, think about what's important in your life and what you want to kind of take with you out of the other end of this.
For sure.
The horses are saying to me, be still, be calm, go with the flow.
Absolutely.
The world turns, things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Debbie. And thank you, your horses. And thank you all for showing up on our first.
In the picture. That was amazing.
Thank you all for coming out and sitting with us and sitting with the herd. And Debbie, this is our first interview in the field, so to speak. We have a bunch more lined up. Debbie, I'm going to put your website up on our page so that people can go there and see your meditation and see what you're doing. And ask you any questions. Don't hesitate to ask Debbie questions. She's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any final words, Debbie?
The meditations are on the Mindfulness at Horses Helping People Facebook page. We do have a website, needs updating. So you probably get the more up-to-date stuff on the Facebook page. But just, look, there's
there you are.
It's
coming back.
Sushi. Yeah, I've got the sun on my screen. So Sushi, has kind of chopped and tailed this interview. Thank you, everyone, I don't know who's out there because I've got the sun on my screen and I can't see it, but
No,
but it's been lovely. It's my childhood dream to sit and talk about horses for an hour. Finally, I found people to listen to.
Absolutely, and just a note, and get in touch with Debbie. Debbie lives off the grid. And this is what I found so amazing. And if you want to get in touch with her about that, beautiful property, but fully off the grid. And that, as a horse farm, that's amazing. That's just, Debbie, you've just done such an amazing job there. Taking it from what you told me you started with to where it is now. I'm in awe. So Anyhow, thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate it. And I'm going to post, this is being recorded, so I'll post this on Facebook and you can share it. And that's that. Thank you, Debbie. And thank you, horses. Thank you, Sushi Commander. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.